The cold wind howled through the broken walls of mining station. Zeta 9. The humans inside wore torn uniforms and bruises like badges of survival. For over 100 years, they had been used, beaten, and discarded by their alien masters. The Xarn Dominion, rulers of 15 star systems, saw humans as nothing more than tools to dig, build, and die without question. Kalen, a young worker with scars across his back, stared at the sky through a crack in the ceiling. The stars once made him dream. Now they were just reminders of cages without walls. A security drone buzzed past, scanning the room. Everyone froze. If it detected low output, someone would vanish by morning. The aliens called it efficiency. The humans called it what? It was slavery. But something had shifted. Quietly. Slowly. In the underground sections of the mine, whispers had begun. Kalen had heard them 2 cycles ago. A name, a place. A human who had escaped and returned with forbidden knowledge. They said she was building something in the forgotten tunnels beneath the planet's core. That night, Kalen followed the symbols etched into the stone. 3 curved lines. A circle, then another line, slashed across them all. It led him to an old shaft sealed decades ago, but the wall felt different. Warmer, like it was breathing. He touched it, and it opened. Inside, the air shimmered, not with heat, but with life. Dozens of humans were working, not with picks or plasma cutters, but with tech older than the Xarn Empire itself. And there, at the center, stood her. Captain Lira Voss, the one who had vanished from Earth's last warcruiser. Her eyes glowed faintly as she studied the core of what looked like a sleeping machine god. "You're late," she said without turning. Her voice was calm, but it cracked something inside him. He remembered the stories his grandfather told about soldiers who didn't kneel. About Earth, before the fall. Before the surrender, he dropped to his knees anyway. "I thought you were a myth," he whispered. She turned to him, her gaze piercing through decades of fear. "Then stand up, because we're about to become one." The machine behind her pulsed, and every light in the chamber flickered. The others turned to face him. Some were children when Earth fell. Others had never seen blue sky. But all of them had the same fire in their eyes now. They were building a weapon, not just of metal, but of memory. A weapon that remembered every lash, every scar, every stolen life. Kalen stepped forward, drawn by a force he couldn't name. Lira placed a small cube in his hand. It glowed with a cold, sharp light. He didn't ask what it was. His soul already knew. Above them, the Xarn Lords celebrated their cycle of dominance. They toasted to 100 more years of control, but deep below, something ancient stirred. Not technology. Not magic, humanity. The part of them that had never died. In the slave barracks the next day, Kalen moved with purpose. He spoke in code, passed signals, drew lines and dust in walls. More workers vanished each night, only to return changed. Stronger, sharper, ready. The guards noticed, but too late. By the time the first Xarn officer screamed, the uprising had already begun. The mines exploded in coordinated bursts. Tunnels collapsed behind retreating humans, cutting off reinforcements. Drones fell from the sky, hijacked mid-flight by human-coded viruses. And in orbit, a long-dead signal reached something sleeping on the edge of known space. A fleet, human-made. Forgotten. But not destroyed. The system lit up with warnings. The Xarn High Command panicked. "What do you mean there's a human fleet? We destroyed Earth, but Earth was never a place. It was a people." And they were done kneeling. Back in the underground base, Lira stood before the newly awakened war core. It hummed like a heartbeat. Kalen stood beside her now, armored in recycled plating and courage. The others gathered in silence. Lira raised her voice. "We were miners, builders, slaves, but now we are the blade. And they will remember why our ancestors once ruled the stars." A single pulse shot from the core. It wasn't a weapon. Not yet. It was a message. A warning. A countdown. Across the galaxy, human slaves began to vanish from work camps. Transports crashed into moons. Factories stopped running. The Xarn didn't see the full picture until it was too late. The humans weren't escaping. They were gathering. The Xarn Empire was not used to fear. For centuries, they controlled planets by fear alone. But now, across multiple sectors, strange reports came in. Entire human work colonies had gone silent. Mining output dropped to zero. Surveillance feeds showed empty rooms and broken drones. Commanders whispered of rebellion, but the council laughed it off. "They are slaves," said Warlord Draken. "They cannot organize. They have no weapons. They have no worlds." But deep below Surface 39, the truth was growing like fire under ice. Human rebels were no longer hiding. They were planning strikes with precision that surprised even themselves. What began as whispers turned into firepower. What was once despair now had a name, Operation Ashfall. Kalen stood in a control chamber with Lira, Voss and 2 other cell leaders. A hologram of the nearby star system hovered between them. Red marks blinked over supply lines, weapon depots, and slave barracks. Lira tapped one location, a Xarn training outpost on Delta Prime. "This is our next hit," she said. "We won't just free the humans there. We'll make sure no Xarn ever trains again." Kalen looked around. They had fighters now. Guns. Stolen from supply crates. Pulse blades forged in secret. Virus programs that turned security drones into allies. Every stolen piece of tech now had one purpose: revenge. The team moved fast. Using a stolen transport, they passed Xarn patrols by broadcasting fake coordinates. Kalen led the drop onto Delta Prime. He remembered being a child there, watching humans get beaten during discipline hours. Now he was back not with fear, but with fury. The rebels hit hard and without warning. Drones turned on guards. Blast doors sealed exits. Rebels moved through the outpost like a silent storm. They didn't just kill. They captured footage. They broadcast it to other camps, showing humans fighting back and winning. Back on Zeta 9, thousands watched the footage in secret. Workers cheered. Some cried. And many, for the first time in years, stood up straight. The idea of resistance spread faster than the Xarn could respond. In the next 3 weeks, 7 more outposts fell. Human rebels became ghosts, slipping in and out of facilities like shadows. The Xarn sent elite hunters, but none returned. Draken ordered orbital strikes, but hit only empty buildings and dummy signals. The humans were always one step ahead. The truth burned deeper than their weapons. The humans were never broken. They were just waiting. And now their time had come. On a cold night inside the rebel base, Kalen sat by the glowing war core. He held the cube Lira had given him. It pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. Lira joined him, setting down a map covered in enemy positions. She noticed his silence. "Do you fear what we're becoming?" she asked softly. "No," Kalen said. "I fear what we'll have to do." Lira nodded. She understood. They weren't just fighting back. They were becoming the storm that would sweep across the stars. And some part of them knew they would not stop until the last Xarn banner burned. Far away, in the Xarn capital on Kethros Prime, the council finally stopped laughing. Emergency meetings were called. Eyes turned to the central AI archive, where data from all sectors poured in. One word kept repeating in the alerts: Ashfall. But no one knew what it truly meant. Not yet. In a sealed chamber deep beneath the capital, a single Xarn researcher trembled as he decrypted the human transmissions. Not battle orders, not supply logs. Something worse: memories, stories, faces of every human the Xarn had ever enslaved. The rebels weren't hiding their past. They were turning it into a weapon. The eye blinked to life and said one final sentence before shutting down. Their pain has become strategy. That same night, the stars above Sector 12 flared with fire. Human warships once thought lost reappeared, silent, deadly, bearing no flags, no nation, only vengeance. They launched coordinated EMP blasts, disabling Xarn fleets before a single shot was fired. In less than 3 hours, 6 Xarn planets lost orbital control. The humans didn't celebrate. They kept moving, kept striking. Every scar they bore became a blade, every memory a fire. This was not chaos. This was calculation, and it had only just begun. Asterisk. The Xarn Empire declared martial law across 5 systems. Planetary governors were replaced with warlords. Curfews were enforced. Slave camps were locked down, and every human was scanned daily. Still, the attacks continued. No one saw them coming. No one knew who led them. And worst of all, no one could stop them. The rebels had spread too far. In every prison, every tunnel, every shipyard, there were humans now carrying hidden codes, silent triggers, and purpose in their blood. It wasn't just an army anymore. It was a movement. Kalen stood in an abandoned station, orbiting Xarek 4. Dust floated in the air, and old human flags were faded on the walls. He looked over a table filled with old tech disruptor cores, neural blades, code chips, all stolen, all modified, all ready to be used. Lira walked in with a datapad in her hand. Her eyes were tired, but her voice was sharp. They're moving. Reinforcements to Sector 19. Half a fleet. 6 dreadnoughts. If they land, they'll break the rebellion in that region. Kalen nodded. Then we don't let them land. The plan was insane. 20 rebel ships, most half-broken, would face a fleet 5 times their size. But this war was never about numbers. It was about meaning. And the humans had nothing left to fear. The battle began over the gas clouds of Rethan. The Xarn came in full formation, clean, precise, merciless. But the humans came in chaos. Their ships scattered, warped, and pulsed with unpredictable movements. The Xarn officers laughed at the poor coordination until their own ships exploded. From within, each human ship carried a virus, not digital, biological, carried by cyber-enhanced human pilots willing to die. They injected the virus into enemy cores and then rammed the vessels head-on. It wasn't war. It was sacrifice. It was fury turned into fire. By the time the Xarn dreadnoughts fired their main cannons, it was already too late. 2 were disabled. 1 crashed into Rethan's upper atmosphere and burned like a second sun. The rest scattered, retreating into uncharted space. In the wreckage, Lira's voice echoed across rebel frequencies. This is not the end. This is the beginning. Tell every slave on every world we are coming. The message went viral. Across the galaxy, human slaves stopped pretending to be weak. They rose. Some with fists, others with stolen tools. But all with the same fire in their hearts. On mining colony Zevra 3, a 12-year-old girl led a group of orphans to disable a power grid. On a cargo hauler near Glanthus, a human engineer sabotaged the jump drive, trapping a Xarn crew in deep space. On Kalen's own homeworld, the humans took back an entire city without firing a shot, just by shutting off the AI that watched them. The rebellion was no longer led by one face. It had become an idea. And ideas could not be chained. Back on the capital planet of the Xarn Empire, panic spread. The High Council held secret meetings. Their top general, Zurvak, begged them to unleash the planet cracker's weapons that could destroy entire worlds. But even the council knew what that meant. Use those, one elder said, and we prove we've lost. But in silence, orders were given anyway. A planet cracker was sent toward a human-held world, Taraxis, a peaceful colony with no defense, no weapons, just humans farming under open skies. The council believed it would send a message. It did, but not the one they expected. The humans had intercepted the transmission. Lira and Kalen watched in horror as the countdown began. They had 20 minutes. No ships were close enough to intercept. No codes could be hacked in time. It was a death sentence. Still, Lira tried. Her fingers moved over ancient tech, trying to override the missile's path. Kalen paced behind her, helpless. Then, the war core pulsed, and something ancient responded. From deep space, a vessel, blacker than the void, appeared near Taraxis. No one recognized it, not even the Xarn databases. It was human, but not from any known colony. It was older, forgotten, but very much alive. The ship absorbed the missile's energy, then fired a single silent beam toward the Xarn ship that had launched it. There was no explosion, just nothing. The ship was gone. Erased from space. Lira stared at the screen. What was that? She whispered. Kalen answered with awe in his voice. A ghost. One of the old war fleet. More were waking up. Signals from hidden caches long buried beneath moons and asteroid belts began to blink. Earth's final legacy, the machines built. Not for conquest, but for survival, were returning to the stars. The humans hadn't just waited in silence. They had left behind giants. Asterisk. The appearance of the ancient warship changed everything. Across the galaxy, humans and Xarn alike stopped and stared at the footage. The ship had no markings, no transmission code, no name. But its design matched no known human colony either. It was older than any modern vessel. It was a relic from the first collapse, a time even the Xarn had forgotten. But the ship was not alone for long. Within hours, more began to appear. From gas clouds, from asteroid fields, from beneath oceans and long-dead planets. Ships shaped like spears, like knives, like wolves. Some were silent, some glowed with ancient energy. They didn't speak. They just waited. Lira stood in the command chamber of the rebel base. She watched the signals flashing across the galaxy. One by one, old codes activated. Earth's emergency. Failsafe Operation Genesis was fully waking up. And no one knew what the ancient AI inside those ships truly remembered. Kalen stood beside her. Do we command them? No, Lira said. We release them. And with a single gesture, she uploaded the pain. From every human colony, every slave mine, every prison world, memories were gathered and streamed into the war core. Faces, screams, names, lost children, burned cities, torn flags. The warships didn't need orders. They needed truth. The data reached them like a cry from a dying ancestor. And the giants moved. In the Valen Nebula, a Xarn fortress exploded without warning. No missile trails. No alarms. Just instant erasure. On the edge of Sector 6, an entire Xarn fleet vanished into static as a single human ship blinked past it. The Xarn tried to trace the patterns, to find the source, but there was no logic, because vengeance does not follow maps. In the High Council's chambers, fear finally broke their pride. The elders demanded full withdrawal from the outer systems. Traken argued, but even he couldn't explain how their most advanced ships were being outmatched by ghosts. They aren't fighting with weapons. Traken growled. They're fighting with memory. Even the Xarn civilians, who once cheered their empire's control over humans, began to whisper doubts. News of rebel victories spread even faster than the council could suppress them. Some planets refused to send more slaves. Others surrendered outright. The chain was breaking, but not fast enough for Lira. She stood before a gathering of human cell leaders, both old and new. The chamber buzzed with tension. She pointed at the central star map, showing the Xarn capital Kethros Prime. This is where it ends, she said. Not with 100 more battles, one strike. One truth delivered. Where it hurts, Kalen frowned. They'll expect that. The capital is defended by 3 planetary shields, orbital cannons, and 2 war moons. Lira nodded. Which is why we don't attack it with guns. A plan formed in silence. Not of fire but of light. They would not destroy Kethros Prime. They would reveal it. They would show every species under Xarn rule what the Empire had done. What the humans had survived. And what was coming for them if they stood in the way. The plan required a device. Something ancient. Something lost. The heart of Echo's dot said to be a core of pure data from the old Earth archives. Buried on the shattered world of Helion. A world no one visited. A place cursed and abandoned after the last silence. But Lira believed it was still there. And if they found it, they could project the story of every human slave across the stars. Kalen and a small team left within hours. Their ship, the Ember's Mark, flew through uncharted space. The planet Helion appeared as a cracked stone in the void. Its surface scorched and twisted. No life signals. No AI response. Just cold wind and silence. They landed near a broken tower. It looked like a spear driven into the planet. Inside they found no bodies, only carvings. Human writing mixed with old alien code. A warning. A promise. And at the very center a black cube humming with light. The heart of Echo's dot had pulsed when Kalen touched it. Images raced across his mind. Earth cities before the fall. Soldiers marching under a blue sky. Children laughing. Then fire. Then chains. Then silence. He dropped to his knees. But he did not cry. He stood back up and carried it out with his own hands. On the way back, Lira received the signal. The ancient warships, now numbering over 60, had surrounded Kethros Prime. No shots fired. No threats made. They simply waited. The Xarn leaders stared at the sky, knowing they were no longer rulers. They were the ones being judged now. The sky over Kethros Prime had never been quiet. For centuries, it echoed with war drills, fleet formations, and the roar of passing dreadnoughts. But now, it was silent. Dozens of ancient human ships hovered above the capital, like watchers from another age. They didn't fire. They didn't speak. They simply existed, and that terrified the Xarn more than weapons ever could. The Xarn Council begged for answers. Trucken issued commands, threats, even bribes to any species willing to fight on their behalf. But no one responded. All eyes turned away. Former partners stayed quiet. The entire galaxy was watching. No one wanted to stand in front of human wrath. Lira stood aboard the Ember's Mark as it exited hyperspace. Kalen held the heart of Echoes beside her, wrapped in a casing of starlight metal. The object felt alive, humming with all the memories fed into it from across the rebellion. It wasn't just a recording. It was a mirror to history. They approached Kethros Prime without cloaking, no fear, no hiding. As they neared the planet, one of the warships opened its path, an ancient signal exchanged between human vessels, recognizing them as kin. The capital defense system did not fire. Not because it couldn't, but because the operators had walked away. The humans landed in the central square of the city. Xarn soldiers watched from the shadows, but none raised a weapon. Civilians peeked from windows, some trembled. Others whispered apologies into the air. The very presence of humans on their soil was something the Xarn never imagined. And now, it was happening. Lira placed the heart of Echoes on the ground. Kalen stood behind her, his armor still dented from past battles. She spoke not with volume, but with weight. You called us slaves. You broke our homes. You erased our names. Today, we give them back. The heart pulsed. A wave of light spread outward. It rose into the air and filled the city with images. Not of war, but of truth. Scenes of children working in mines. Men and women buried alive for speaking up. Entire families erased from records. Every scream recorded. Every lash remembered. The city fell to its knees. Not from power, but from shame. The broadcast expanded across the entire planet. then across the system, then across the galaxy. Every species tuned in. Every empire paused. Even those who once ignored the humans now watched with open mouths, because the humans were not just fighting for themselves anymore. They were holding up a mirror to the universe. In one corner of the council hall, an old Xarn noble dropped his cane and whispered, "We were the monsters." One by one, council members stood and walked out. Not out of courage, but because they no longer had the right to rule. That night, the ancient warships turned away from Kethros Prime and entered standby positions above the planet. Not conquerors, not destroyers, guardians. Humanity had not come to burn the city. They came to make sure it never forgot. Back in the Ember's Mark, Kalen sat beside Lira in silence. They had won, but there were no cheers, no banners. Just silence. She looked at him and spoke softly. "Do you feel peace?" He shook his head. "Not yet, but I feel something close." Across the galaxy, chains fell. Not all at once, not everywhere, but enough. On prison planets, the guards surrendered. On mining worlds, flags were changed. In hidden places, children spoke their real names for the first time in years. But not every Xarn bowed. Pockets of resistance remained. Rogue fleets still moved in darkness. There would be more battles, more blood. But now, the humans had something they never had before: hope and allies. Many species began reaching out. Small races once oppressed by the Xarn offered help, shelter, information. The rebellion had become something larger, something the Xarn couldn't defeat with fleets or fear. Back at the rebel base, a message came through the old channel. A voice, ancient, calm. "You have awakened us," it said. "The old ones of Earth left us behind to wait for a time like this. If you call again, we will answer." It was signed simply, Echo, Fleet. Kalen stared at the screen and smiled. The past had not been forgotten. It had only been waiting. Asterisk. The stars looked different now. They were the same stars that once watched silent as humanity was dragged in chains across the galaxy. But now, they shimmered with something else: recognition. The story of the rebellion had spread farther than any weapon could. It was no longer just a war. It was history correcting itself. Lira. Voss stood on the bridge of a new human flagship, the Sovereign Flame, not a relic, not stolen. Built by human hands on a free world, with help from former slaves of other species. A symbol that humanity had returned not as a warning, but as a force to remember. Kalen stood beside her, older now, battle-worn but steady. The rebellion had ended, but their mission had only evolved. The galaxy had cracks left behind by Xarn cruelty. Forgotten people, destroyed worlds, silent suffering. And the humans remembered all of it. The Echo fleet hovered in the distance. Its ships, still ancient, had now formed a new alliance: watchers, guardians, teachers of memory. They had no leaders. They followed only truth. Whenever an empire rose with cruelty in its heart, they would be there. Across what remained of the Xarn Empire, civil war broke out. Some wanted to restore the old ways. Others called for peace. For the first time, the former masters feared each other more than they feared the humans. Their military might was broken. Their pride shattered. Their capital unchanged, but forever exposed. But the humans did not finish them with fire. They did something worse. They left them to live with what they had done. One by one, human forces left Xarn-controlled space. They didn't take territory. They didn't raise flags. They left behind libraries, data crystals, and recordings of every atrocity. And then, they vanished into the stars, leaving silence behind. Not because they were weak, because they had become something greater. On the once lost world of Taraxis, children played without fear under a sun no longer owned by tyrants. An elder woman told stories by firelight. Stories of chains and uprising. Of a silent fleet that watched from above. and of the boy named Kalen who once carried memory like a weapon. Lira didn't stay to rule. She disappeared after the peace treaty, her name passed in whispers among new colonies. Some said she lived on a quiet planet, raising a family. Others believed she entered cryosleep, waiting for the next call. Kalen stayed behind, helping rebuild worlds, carrying the weight of what they had done and what they had spared. One night, in a temple built from the ruins of a slave mine, he spoke to a crowd of freed children. His voice was quiet, but steady. You are not what they made you. You are what you choose now. The galaxy began to heal. Some wounds would never vanish. Some would take lifetimes to fade. But the cycle had been broken. Not with fire, but with memory, with action, with choice. Humanity had proved they were not monsters, not conquerors, but something even more dangerous. Survivors who remembered Dot in the far reaches of space, near the edge of the known galaxy. A small beacon pulsed. A distress signal. No name, no planet. Just coordinates and a voice. They've returned. We need help. A moment later, an old black ship stirred. The Echo fleet changed course. And once again, the Forgotten would not be alone.